Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is Friday, the 15th of October, 2021. These are the stories that we will be talking about during the course of the show. We'll begin with the OIC's Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission that has strongly condemned the rising wave of Islamophobia, of hate speech, and of hate crimes that are motivated by the Hindu supremacist government of the BJP. Not only that, the Middle Eastern countries have also, some of them have decided to boycott Indian products as well, and there have been some very strong statements that have emanated from the Arab world. At the same time, there is a lot of activity as far as anti-minority movement in India is concerned. We've talked about that in the past as well, whether it targets Christians, whether it targets Muslims, whether there be a discriminatory attitude as far as the Muslims of India is concerned. This is going to be our first segment of the day. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns climate change and Pakistan's effective measures to alleviate the effects of climate change in its country, and that is apparent with the, of course, the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Climate Change, Malik Amin Aslam, who has claimed that emissions in Pakistan were down by 9%. He also talked about the Paris Agreement, which Pakistan is a part of, and he said that Pakistan is continuing its positive role as far as the different initiatives under the Paris Agreement are concerned, and is abiding by the Paris Agreement as far as climate change is concerned. This is going to be our second segment of the day. Then we'll be talking about the World Food Day, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be held tomorrow. The theme of the World Food Day is "Our Actions Are Our Future." As this year's theme makes quite clear, the power is to change things. The power to change food insecurity across the world is in our hands. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Rural Women Day that is being observed today across the world as well. This international day has a theme: rural women cultivating good food for all. Of course, we need to recognize all of these brilliant and hardworking women who not only earn for themselves but also for their entire families, and we have examples of them in Punjab, we have examples of them in interior Sindh as well. And we need to give equal opportunities to all, and that is one of the main, of course, objectives of the International Rural Women's Day. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and this first segment concerns the statement that has come from the IPHRC of the OIC that has condemned the rising wave of Islamophobia and hate crimes in India. More in the following report.
Is grappling with myriad existential challenges such as pandemic, climate change, energy crunch, and looming financial crisis. But India is gripped by Islamophobia, communal violence, and virulent hate. The brutalization of Indian society under Hindu nationalist BJP government has rendered a multi-ethnic country apartheid regime where minorities are living in state of fear. The escalating hate crimes against the Muslim community, particularly in India's Assam, instigated Organization of Islamic Cooperation to condemn the systematic persecution and violence orchestrated against the Muslim community. OIC denounced the disgraceful media reports of communal violence against the Indian Muslims and pressed the Indian government to act in a responsible manner. Earlier, back in 2020, OIC's human rights body condemned the negative profiling of Muslims in India in media, subjecting them to discrimination and violence with impunity and maligning them for spread of COVID-19. The most outrageous facet of unrelenting vicious Islamophobic campaign in India is state patronage and protection of Indian fanatic goons who subject Muslims to violence and intimidation with impunity. Modi's cabinet ministers are responsible for mobilizing unbridled Hindu mobs against Muslims by inflammatory speeches and offering state protection to militant Hindu activists. The escalation of communal violence, religious intolerance, discrimination, and suppression of dissent under Modi's ascendance to power indicate that India is en route towards majoritarian autocracy, which will ultimately impose a final solution upon minorities. Pakistan has persistently urged the Muslim world and international community to hold fundamentalist saffron BJP regime accountable for catalyzing persecution and vilification of Indian Muslims to stem prospects of genocidal violence.
To talk more about what is happening across India and the latest updates as far as that is concerned, and the condemnation by OIC. We've been joined by Raja Faisal, who is, of course, an analyst and a foreign affairs expert as well. Raja Faisal, thank you very much to have joined us. Let's begin, because I have a lot to say as far as India is concerned, but let's begin with the OIC and the statement that has come from the IPHRC, that is the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, that openly now condemns the rising wave of Islamophobia, of hate crimes inside of India. A bit too late, or it's high time they've taken out a statement at the right moment?
I think it's never too late to call wrong wrong. And but to me, I think the credit goes to people of the Gulf countries, people of the Middle Eastern countries, the way they have highlighted their sentiments on social media. Especially there were, members of the parliament from Kuwait, then Grand Mufti, who actually happened to said that a blatant aggression against Muslim citizens at the hands of extremist groups supported by official bodies, it hurts everyone with the conscience. This was said by him, and then there was a book author, Khalid. He's a very famous, very first time the term was used by him.
Islamophobia.
State-sponsored Islamophobia is taking place in India. So I think this was extremely important, and OIC had to do it, because so many activists, social media activists from the Middle Eastern countries, they have been calling on OIC, they have been calling on GCC, they have been calling on United Nations as well, because they were concerned about the hike of Islamophobia which is taking place within India, and it must be shunned and it must be stopped, because the footages which are coming out of India, they are disastrous
and disturbing, to say the least. You talked about the international, of course, leaders that are talking about, especially from the Gulf countries. I'd like to add a couple of others. Oman's Grand Mufti Sheikh Ahmad Khalili has tweeted about it. You talked about Khalid Baidoun, also former director of the Islamic Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the ISCO. Mr. Al-Wajairi also tweeted about Narendra Modi, and the hashtag India kills Muslims is also trending in the Arab countries.
And there are several more hashtags which are coming from the Middle Eastern countries that are help Kashmir. There is another one, India is the terrorist country. There is another one, Modi is a terrorist. And very important is the statement by the lawmakers of Kuwait, Kuwait National Assembly.
All right, we'll be back. We'll be, of course, continue our discussion, but after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and in Newsroom we're discussing, of course, the statement that has been issued by the OIC concerning the hate speech and Islamophobia emanating from India. That and so much more that we are discussing. Raja Faisal, we were talking about the hashtags that have emanated.
The top trends in Middle East, Gulf countries, help Kashmir, India is the terrorist country, Modi is a terrorist country, terrorist, and India kills, obviously, Muslims. These were the top trends of the Gulf countries. And the very important thing I wanted to highlight here is the Kuwaiti National Assembly and the lawmakers. They agreed upon a statement which was issued by the lawmakers. It was in the wake of the wave of violence and discrimination committed against Indian Muslims, including killing, displacement and burning. The lawmakers stand in solidarity with Muslims in India, not with India, but Muslims in India. So this is the concern which is going on in the Gulf countries. And I think, looking at the facts that in India, the presence in the Gulf countries, the presence of, the Indians, if we look at it, I have the figures, $40 billion are the remittances every year from the Middle Eastern countries to India, and that is the official figure. If we talk about the hundi and all of that, that can be double to it. And 8.5 million migrant workers, they are working in the Middle Eastern countries right now, in the Gulf countries. And if we look at the imports of the crude oil which India does from the Middle Eastern countries, that goes to, they are the third largest importers of crude oil from the Middle East countries.
Now, Raja Faisal, these statements that have emanated from the Gulf countries, plus the statement that has emanated from the IPHRC, that is, of course, an organization under the OIC. Do you feel that is going to have an effect as far as the business that you've just talked about with India of the Gulf countries is concerned? And will it also have a kind of rebound effect on other important organizations such as the United Nations or maybe the European Union to come out with stronger statements and pressurize India to stop these hate crimes against their minorities, especially Muslims?
Omar, genuinely, I expect that there will be an impact on India after this, but looking at the facts, the ground facts, India is hegemonic towards its neighboring countries. Number one, India is going on a track that is Hindutva ideology, and it does not accept the minorities. The laws for the minorities, they are being ignored. And if we look at the world, the wider world, especially the Americans, they have turned them into the Indians into their front line against China in the US-China trade war. And if we look at the Western countries, they are sitting in the same block. Looking at the facts of the ground realities of the region right now, I don't think there would be some strict actions taken against India, but at the same time, I think this is the time that moralities should be considered on behalf of the Westerners as well. They need to talk about it and shun these practices. But what I see, the pressure would be mounted from the Middle Eastern countries, while the immediate trade, the exports of India in 15 years or 20 years, the previous 20 years, while Pakistan was busy fighting war on terror, they were busy increasing their exports to the Middle Eastern countries, and they turned themselves into a breadbasket for the Middle Eastern countries.
All right, breadbasket for the Middle Eastern countries, that is what India was doing while Pakistan was fighting the war against terror. More after this short break. Stay tuned. And welcome with my guest Raja Faisal. We're discussing, of course, a recent statement by the OIC, the IPHRC, that is, of course, a sister organization of the OIC, that has taken out a very strong statement against what India is perpetrating inside of its country against the Muslims. Now, Raja Faisal, this commission, that is the IPHRC, has given two recommendations. The first is the Muslim community and the human rights organizations within India should exhaust all the available domestic remedies, including domestic courts, for the redressal of grievances. And secondly, international community should engage with the Indian authorities to ensure accountability of those who are involved in violence, hate speech, incitement to hatred and populist propaganda against the Muslims. These are important points. Nevertheless, are they achievable?
I think they are achievable, but looking at the facts of India right now, the internal politics of India, the way India's internal politics is moving, BJP, if it wants to secure its legacy back, or if it wants to strengthen its government, then the way they have been performing in the previous times, that the anti-Pakistan and anti-Muslim and these kind of narratives, they were selling very good for them, and they were grabbing on very good votes, and they've been winning. So looking at the facts, I don't think that it is going to take place very quickly.
Unless there is going to be a sizable amount of pressure on India from the countries that are very close to it, or that are providing economic assistance to it. Now, let's go to Amit Shah, the Union Home Minister. On Thursday, he made a comment in Goa, and it's a very, it talks a lot about what India's mindset is, not since now, but since the last many years. What do you have to say on that?
I'll take you to the earlier the week, Poonch. In the Poonch sector, there is they claim it that it was a terrorist attack. To me, it was not. It was yet another false flag attack. And
that was what he was referring to, in fact.
Exactly. And it takes place on Sikh regiment. Five of their soldiers, 6 regiment soldiers, they happen to be Sikh, and they are the ones who get killed. And why they did it? Look at the situation in Haryana, look at the situation, internal situation, security situation right now in Punjab. What we can see is that situations there for India, they are not in the favor. So, because of the
Uttar
farmers'
Pradesh also,
protest,
if you remember,
Yeah.
Ashish Mehra, who ran down a couple of farmers.
Farmer protests, they are taking a toll on the existing administration of India, and they want to control it. And they wanted to control it through the sentiments. They want to change them sentiments into anti-Pakistan and anti-Muslim and anti-Kashmiri sentiments. Why? They can see that if Modi goes to UNGA, outside of the UNGA, if few people are protesting against Modi, they are Kashmiris joining hands with the Khalistanis. So both of them together, they are voicing against Narendra Modi, and Narendra Modi does not like the Sikh having good relations with the Kashmiris. So that's why this all mania is going on. And
The false flag operations, Raja Faisal, to be very frank, it's not the first time that we're hearing about
exactly.
it. Pulwama and so many other false flag operations that have been, glorified in their own mass media through films, through television, and through the different news reports that they've made, all based on falsehood.
And yet again, he's Amit Shah, the Home Minister. He's talking about that. Oh, we will, wage another kind of surgical strike over Pakistan. It's like, you can be hegemonic towards the other countries of the region, as you have been, against the others. But when it comes to Pakistan, you need to be very serious about it. If you do it, then you have to be, ready to face the consequences, like we did in February 2019. I mean, you released the payload in Pakistan, but we gave you a bloody nose. And when I say bloody nose, along with a cup of tea, we did give it to Abhinandan, and I think everyone is aware of that. And if they want to repeat the episode, most welcome. Pakistan is always ready for the talks. Come on the table and talk with
Remember,
Pakistan.
speaking of talks, our Prime Minister was in his first address talked about talking with India. India has never reciprocated in kind. The number of times we have given them the olive branch, telling them, let's talk about all the thorny issues, including that of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I don't know what's going on in their mind. I think at the core of it all, they have never accepted Pakistan being an independent state.
Never ever. And right now, the government of India is obviously generated by the RSS ideology, the Hindutva ideology. The Hindutva ideology have some sort of complex because they have been ruled by the Muslims for 1,000 years. So they have always kept that in their back of the head, and that's why they are anti-Islam. Islamophobia persists within the ranks of Indians, Hindutva ideology, and everyone is against Islam and Muslims and Pakistan. And Pakistan, obviously, the creation of Pakistan was against the ideology of Hindutva. So this is the key thing. I think they will never accept. But coming back to the fact that Amit Shah, if he's becoming a war maniac, then from my side, I would only say that my Prime Minister, he has highlighted it time and again that we as Pakistan will be always there for the talks. But if somebody wants to wage a war against Pakistan, then of course we are ready for the war. Who else could be more ready than us? We have been fighting war and terror for 15 years, and Pakistan is a war-hardened country. And if somebody wants to wage a war, most welcome. We will never go away from that.
Of course, the sentiment is quite shared as far as what you've just said. Nevertheless, these statements or these heated arguments that have emanated from India, whether it be from Amit Shah, whether it be from other important leaders, or even their military in the past as well, have always been generated at a time, at a moment when they themselves are unstable within their own country. There is a huge argument within India that is emanating on the way that they are treating their minorities. There are two articles that came out. I'd like to highlight them. First came out in the beginning of this month in Time or nowhere else, that talks about, is India headed for an anti-Muslim genocide? It talks about Gandhiism. It talks about how Gandhi's legacy is being completely destroyed. And if you remember well, even the murder of Gandhi is being glorified by the BJP government itself. And secondly, Rana Ayub, who's a very renowned Indian journalist, very recently wrote an opinion piece in the Washington Post in which she talks about two suns, two systems of justice, and one measure for Indians. Fall in line, and of course she makes the comparison between Shah Rukh Khan's son, who's still in jail, and of course the other son of the BJP minister who ran over the farmers and has been scot-free. Now these are two very important examples to look at what India is going through right now. This polarity, what is going to become of India in the days and months and years to come if this continues?
Same like Nazis, as our Prime Minister time and again has been highlighting, and now world is deeply looking into what Prime Minister Imran Khan has been highlighting in the past, especially in that UNGA as well, and in his speeches time and again he has highlighted that this is today's Hindutva ideology, RSS, BJP, it is same like the Nazis of the previous century, and whatever the Nazis did, they are doing it right now. And I am telling you, Omar, the future of this discrimination, the future of this barbarism and this genocide is going to be the same, no different from the Nazis. The way Nazis were vanished from the world, this is going to happen.
Okay, so and we'll be looking forward to that unless and until India changes course, understands what it's doing, and we don't see that happening because we haven't seen that happening in the last few years. Thank you very much, Raza Faisal, to have joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, analyst and foreign affairs expert Raja Faisal talking to us about what is emanating as far as India is concerned, and that anti-minority sentiment that Indian government is perpetrating since the last very years. And of course, now it is being said openly in all the international media outlets and also by the Gulf countries. Let's go to our second segment, and that concerns climate change and of course Pakistan's Pakistan's work as far as alleviating the effects of climate change is concerned. More in the following report.
Change depicts one of the most debilitating existential threats to humanity, which has rendered both developed and developing world vulnerable to destructive ramifications. Despite multiple deafening warnings issued by United Nations, global response to climate change remains meager and scant. In order to combat this debilitating challenge, Pakistan, as a responsible global actor, geared its maximum potential to dilute impact of climate-induced disruption. Highlighting Pakistan's resolve to climate action, Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Climate Change Malik Amin Aslam noted that emissions in Pakistan are down by 9%. Pakistan's climate mitigation actions are diverse in scope, such as robust natural capital restoration efforts including 10 billion tree tsunami program, protected areas initiative, and efforts to force climate resilient economy. As greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere are high enough to guarantee climate disruption for decades, Pakistan adopted a number of policy actions aimed at curbing greenhouse emissions from high emission sectors like energy and industry. Although Pakistan's contribution to the climate crisis is negligible at just 0.8%, the country remained resolute to shift from fossil fuels to cleaner energy sources to decarbonize electricity in order to meet the Paris climate pledges. Thus, Pakistan, as a party to Paris Agreement, didn't just rely on empty rhetoric but proved its climate commitment by sustainable green policies, nature-based solutions to technology-based interventions. Pakistan is accurately showing climate leadership by embarking on a plan to decarbonize its energy sector at its earliest. Climate change.
Now to talk more about this, we've been joined by Maryam Shabbir, who's a leading environmentalist. Thank you very much, Maryam, to have joined us. Maryam, seeing all the work that Pakistan is doing to alleviate the effects of climate change, how do you feel is the international community reciprocating as far as Pakistan's efforts is concerned? Because of course I'd like to quote Amin Aslam Saab, in which he said that emissions in Pakistan are down by 9%. And of course the work that Pakistan is doing, do you feel it is being acknowledged enough by the international community?
Hi, Omar, I think we have talked many times about the efforts of the current government, which is doing related to climate change. I think if we compare that with the previous governments, this government is doing quite a lot. But of course, there is a lot which needs to be done, of course. As far as our work is concerned, that whether it is resonating the international community or not, but well, we all know that this 10 billion tree tsunami which was launched in a decade of ecosystem restoration launched by Pakistan on World Environment Day as well. These are the things which are very unique and very I would say cost effective when it comes to the mitigation of climate change. But this claim of course, that when trees are planted, they do absorb some of the carbon emissions, and they do play a vital role to mitigate climate change. But
All right.
that
Now, coming from climate change, I'd like to take you back a couple of months. There was this report that was taken out by the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank as far as the effects of climate change that will affect Pakistan if the needful is not done. And the heading of that article was climate change is going to cost Pakistan $3.8 billion yearly if Pakistan does not take enough care of that. It talks about the average temperatures that are going to rise in Pakistan. It talks about the crops, how they are going to be affected. It talks about how the different rains at the unnatural times are going to affect Pakistan in different manners. How do you see that? Do you feel that we are going at the right pace? Because the report that came out in May this year is extremely I should say not damaging, but I mean, it really puts a lot of fear in us on what we should expect and what could happen to Pakistan in the coming years.
The report which you are mentioning is, of course, has really good calculation, around $3 billion. But that effect and that cost has been it's not because of the emissions caused by Pakistan, but it is because of the global emissions, and due to which Pakistan would be facing, and of course in top 10 most vulnerable countries due to climate change. So this cost, if we talk about this cost, some of the measures can be taken at the local and national levels, of course, which this government is doing, and there are some areas where efforts are needed to be done. But when it comes to international community, they need to, of course, invest in green technology transfer, clean technology transfer, and green businesses, and under this climate finance pledge, which under Paris Agreement they are responsible to pay to the developing countries. So they calculated around $100 billion cost for all developing countries, but every country is calculating that this cost is 2 to 3 times more when it comes to the effects are devastating impacts of climate change on each country. So I think in one way or other way, I agree that Pakistan would need, and I guess in next 5-10 years we would need more money to really invest in different sectors when it comes to mitigate climate change and for adaptation as well, with the damage which floods and heat waves and cold waves and glacier lake outburst floods they caused in Pakistan. This is all because of the global emissions which developed countries are causing in Pakistan.
All right. Now, Maryam, also, Pakistan is a developing country that focuses a lot on agriculture. We are an agriculture-based economy. Nevertheless, when the Prime Minister opens a lot of initiatives, like, of course, the Kisan portal that has been inaugurated today to help alleviate the problems of the farmers, how important is it also to make the farmers understand the effects of climate change and how they can work around it in order to protect their crops?
Omar, I have worked with, due to my field work on different researches, I have been in touch with different farmers as well. We spoke with them. We traveled to DG Khan along with our team as well at STPI and different parts of Punjab, and even I have traveled in Tharpakar as well due to my field work. And what I came to know is that it is very obvious that farmers are not aware of the technical jargons which we use in climate change world, but they do understand the impacts of climate change, not in technical language, but they do understand because they are cultivating crops from years to years and from generations to generations, and they can tell you that what could be the impact in next 5 to 10 years. What they don't know is and they don't have capacity and resources, is that how to adapt to those changes, because there's delay in sowing and cultivation, which is one of the impact of climate change due to prolonged summers and short winters and intense weather patterns. they don't know what to do. So that sector is there where, capacity building and technology, after
And
harvesting,
making them understand on what needs to be done in their language, in their local language, so that they understand the whole concept in a better manner. Amin Aslam Saab also today talks about livelihood opportunities for the vulnerable women, including youth and women, and he also talks about climate resilient economy. What do you, in your point of view, should be the important parts or segments of this climate resilient economy?
Yes, climate resilient. When it comes to climate change, generally non-technical people or people belonging to different businesses, they think that climate change is something which will just cause floods or cause drought or any such thing, or which will have they only see the obvious impact which climate change is having and devastating, and which is short but intense impact. But what they don't see is that due to let's suppose if we talk about this. Infrastructure. Urban planners, they do not really play a good role, or they do not play any role at all when it comes to urban planning. If urban planners are taken on board and they plan cities according to climate change, they can generate different sort of impact when it comes to climate change. If a city is developed in a way and and urban planner is taken on board, the impact of climate change caused due to flooding or heat wave or any such phenomena would be less as compared to where this is not developed at all. There are a lot of different sectors. This is a very very topic. This where the whole wide sector, every sector needs those changes which can help contribute to economy, because when one phenomena of this climatic event happens or natural event happens, it does impact our economy one way or other way.
Of course, I totally, that is why we need, that's why, as Malik Amin Aslam Sahab has also said, that we need to talk about a climate resilient economy, and we need to accelerate the transition to net zero and a climate resilient economy. This is what he said, quote unquote. I'd also like to ask you about the projected emissions targets that Pakistan wants to achieve by the year 2030, which includes, of course, a shift to 60% renewable energy, 30% electrical vehicles by the year 2030, and of course completely banning imported coal. Easily achievable, difficult target. What's your take on this?
I think when it comes to achieving this e-vehicle policy by 2030 or 60% renewable shift, I think to some extent this is possible, because already we have put a cap on 2 of the projects under CPEC on clean energy when it comes to this. But I see that by 2030 it would be very difficult to completely eradicate coal, although government is trying hard and it must try hard. But the coal lobby, and of course not only lobby, but this cost which is involved with coal, because it is very cheap in Pakistan, and we do not contribute much into the environment as well. In my opinion, it would be very difficult when it comes to coal to completely get rid of it by 2030. It's too early. Maybe by 2050 we would be able to achieve around 70%.
All right. Also, Maryam, Malik Amin Aslam Sahab talks about the role of the private sector, and I say, quote unquote, Pakistan inspires the private sector to play a crucial role in implementing the climate ambition across sectors and the development of nature-based solutions that address Pakistan's mitigation and adaptation potential. Now, how involved, in your point of view, is the private sector, and how much does it need to get involved?
I'll just respond by giving one example. How you can involve this private sector. The implementation of sustainable development goals, private sector can play and make a huge role in that. Let's suppose if we talk about this small businesses, which is of course a private thing. What they can do is that they can youngsters can come forward and they can
SMEs,
set up
you're talking of SMEs.
enterprises to reduce waste, and some are in place, of course, but they are at a very small scale. They can reduce waste and they can make they can make a difference. So small businesses and the bigger businesses, of course, by incorporating environment friendly technologies and environment friendly components in that, those all can play a difference. And of course, this private sector, they have a lot of money, and civil society and media can also push them to use money under CSR they are legally and of course by law as well, they are responsible to use that money as well. There are a lot of options, when it comes to different businesses, there are a lot of options to
True.
make this happen. So yes, they have money, they have resources, and they can of course make a difference. And it's really good idea to push private sector. But I want to mention one thing quickly. This government is focusing on a lot of things, which is very good. But we are looking at industry which is being neglected at this moment. Maybe it's I don't know what the reason, but industries does contribute a lot into the environment and into the emissions and into the pollution. Those also needs to be taken on board, and they also needs to do reforms. They are not mentioned anywhere up till now.
All right. Thank you very much, Maryam Shabbir, to have joined us. Maryam Shabbir, leading environmentalist, talking to us about the statement by Malik Amin Aslam Sahab, in which he talks about the emissions in Pakistan that are down by 9%. Of course, the carbon emissions are continuously going down. And what Malik Amin Aslam Sahab also said, that if the work goes on in the same way, with the same passion, by the year 2040, we'll have a significant reduction as far as the carbon emissions are concerned. But that is not all. There are different initiatives that the country is also going forward with as far as alleviating the effects of climate change are concerned. And we've talked about this in this very segment. Let's talk about our next segment, and that concerns the World Food Day that is being celebrated tomorrow. Tomorrow we don't have a show, so we not wanted to talk about it today. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has taken out a very important statement on this very day today. The statement has been released today, and he talks about important effects as far as the World Food Day is concerned. The theme this year of the World Food Day is "Our actions are our future." The theme is quite apparent. It all depends on the way we act together, the private public sector together, all the societies together as one, in order to make that change as far as the future is concerned. And we know what is happening in Afghanistan. We know how much there is a crisis because of food insecurity. And these are things that the world needs to come together as one and understand and work towards. Despite whatever politics are at play, when it comes to important subjects such as world food and food security, the world needs to understand that unless and until it does not come as one, it will not be able to do the needful. And of course, COVID-19 and so many other diseases have impacted the whole distribution of food and the food production across the world as well, especially in Africa. We've seen what is happening in Afghanistan as well. Antonio Guterres said, and I quote, "Today almost 40% of humanity, 3 billion people, cannot afford a healthy diet. Hunger is on the rise, undernourishment and obesity are on the rise as well. The economic impacts of COVID-19 have made a bad situation even worse." He says we can change how we consume food and make healthier choices for ourselves and for our planet in our food systems. There is hope, he said, quote unquote. He then also asked all the people across the world to join the United Nations as it commits to make transformative action to deliver on sustainable development goals through food systems that deliver better nutrition, a better environment and a better life for every person. We need to do that. We need to understand the whole concept behind it all and work together so that we don't see increase in hunger in the coming years. And finally, let's come to our last story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the International Day of Rural Women. Today, we are celebrating that across the world, including in Pakistan, where the women make and are part of a very important system in our agriculture sector. More in the following report.
International Day of Rural Women is being observed today around the globe, including Pakistan, to recognize the significant role of rural women in supporting their communities. The theme for this year is Rural Women Cultivating Good Food for All. International Day of Rural Women intends to eradicate discrimination faced by women in rural areas. While gender equality and empowerment are key issues involved with women and their rights, it is important to fight against poverty, hunger, and malnutrition faced by women in rural areas. This day was established by United Nations General Assembly to recognize the critical role and contribution of rural women in enhancing agricultural and rural development, improving food security, and eradicating rural poverty.
Ladies and gentlemen, rural women are the key to zero hunger. We need to empower those women so that we can empower our societies. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday with new story segments and issues that concern us and Pakistan as general. Till then, have a great weekend. Nevertheless, do not forget to follow the SOPs, get yourselves vaccinated against COVID-19 and take care as far as dengue is concerned. Allah Hafiz.